go against your grain and against your natural tendencies to hold things in close. Introduce a second advisor, introduce them to the relationships. The trust that the clients have in you is portable. It's transferable to that second advisor. If you trust that advisor, your client will as well. Delegate the service in exchange for some revenue and watch all of these benefits unfold. To our listeners around the globe, welcome to the Top One podcast. I'm your co-host, Jerry Corless, along with my dear friend, Chaz Emerson. Chaz, how you doing today, bud?
Man, I'm doing well. Glad to be back.
Man, it's
Excited
good
about
to be back.
today's podcast.
For those of you who are not watching or only listening, Chaz and I are wearing matching shirts today just to really be dialed in, have uniformity in our communication.
Great minds think alike.
That's right. That's right. Great topic today. We're excited about this one. We recently covered in a podcast 2 models, 2 homes, right? So examining what are the models for your business? Is it transaction-based? Is it recurring revenue, ongoing relationship-based? And then 2 homes, big shop versus independent. And then the potential solution that we found, the hybrid between the two. Alongside kind of running parallel to that evaluation is really also identifying which phase in the advisor lifecycle are you in. So if you think about it, there are really only 5 phases of the advisor lifecycle. We're going to go over those today. It's a great self-examination for an advisor to do. Number 1, to just evaluate current state, where are the opportunities, and then also be strategic about progressing to the next level. So without further ado, we'll begin with phase 1, which is inception. Inception, for those of us that are, by God's grace, gotten past it, it's a fairly traumatic time in life. Inception is obviously new in the business. It is when new revenue is required in order to meet personal and business obligations. Chaz, do you have any commentary on the inception phase?
Man, inception is definitely the most difficult phase for multiple reasons. Just getting over the hump of learning the industry in general, understanding what you're talking about. It's almost like you're practicing to be a professional. You're just getting going. You're getting your practice, trying to gather clients, as we used to say. Take on anybody that you can. Anybody that'll fire a mirror, you're willing to work with them. And it is a really tough phase. I've heard this saying, Jerry, I don't know if you said it or who said it. In our industry, I think you are extremely undercompensated for the first 3 to 5 years that you work to be overcompensated in the long run. But man, it's a grind and just trying to build it. One of the things that as an organization we've tried to do is shorten this phase by incorporating people on teams where there's revenue that can be shared. We'll talk more about that in the other phases, but man, regardless, it's a grind.
It is a grind. Our counsel on this would be that there are 2 main focuses when you're in this phase. Focus number 1 is you have to gain the academic understanding of the business. And so you have to understand the financial products, you have to understand tax law, you have to understand estate law. There's a lot to learn, and I read at some point early in my career that if you spend 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and you do that for, I believe it was 10 years, at the end of that point, you will have read more than doctors read in medical school and attorneys read in law school, and you should be one of the world's foremost known authorities on your subject matter. I personally dedicated 30 minutes early in the morning every day. Working obviously on designations counts toward that, like the Certified Financial Planner designation. But obviously there's endless study that can be done, but it's important to have dedicated time for that in phase 1. And then the second thing to really focus on in phase 1 is your communication ability. So it is to be able to take that academic understanding that you develop, be able to succinctly, clearly communicate that in ways that the public who is not educated as much on the academic side of our business and communicate that in a way where they can understand it enough to where they will move forward. So, typically what stops a lot of people from taking action is fear of the unknown. And so we have to make it a known subject, but also again in a succinct and clear manner as well. So you don't give people fatigue in the process either. So we would say academic understanding and communication skills in phase one is integral.
Couple other quick comments. This is the phase when you're easily working 60 to 70-hour weeks, so it's a mental and physical drain. The mental side, though, is really the rejection and being able to take rejections statistically, and I'm not sure if this still holds, but it's always been if you met with 10 new people as prospects, 3 of them would give you an opportunity and 1 of them would become a client. So 9 out of 10 people are telling you no. And that doesn't sound that bad, but week after week after week of having that rejection, man, it just gets old. But the key to it is high activity, and to Jerry's point is communication. I really struggled the first 6 to 8 months in this phase, as Jerry can attest to, and one of the things for me is I had a passion for the business, but I had a terrible way of communicating my passion, making people almost feel like, they're an idiot if they didn't do what I told them they should do, and so figuring out how to communicate that passion was a learning curve for me, but fortunately, having mentors like Jerry helping me through it, was very helpful.
It was rough, folks. No, man, you're always good. You're always good. Hey, and then the last piece of advice as it relates to inception is that you want to get out of it as quickly as you can. And the way that you get out of it is moving toward phase two. So what we would say is referring back to two models, right? You have to choose from transactions or a recurring revenue model. You either have to have the personal capital or participate with an organization that will extend you capital or be on a team that may exchange revenue for you servicing relationships. But in some way, the point is the fastest way out of the inception phase is to be in the recurring revenue model. You just have to have the capital to be able to expedite that. Meaning you don't want to be taking upfront commissions just because you have to live. You need to find a way to be able to defer the the transaction and have recurring revenue so that you can move out of inception more quickly.
I mean, just like we talked about in our last podcast, it is a grind to build this for someone else. So the ownership side is so important. I mean, if you're going to go through this, you're building a practice. You certainly don't want to build it for someone else that is not transferable.
Preach. Phase two, we would argue, is the greatest celebratory
Absolutely.
moment in the business. It is the point of sustainability. Sustainability is defined as when the sum of your recurring revenue streams is greater than the sum of your business and personal budgets. So if you take insurance renewals, financial planning fees that are renewing, and net investment advisory revenue and trails, all recurring securities revenue, the sum of those three revenue streams, when those are greater than the sum of your business and personal budgets, so that you wake up January 1st and you know that if you have no new clients, you have 100% of your business and personal expenses covered. Greatest moment to celebrate. What do you have to say about phase two, Chaz?
Man, you can breathe, the pressure's off. And I think one of the cool things about this phase, aside from those things, which are really, really important, you can begin to work on your business and not just in your business. Even a little bit more difficult than just educating yourself, which is extremely important, but really thinking longer term about how am I going to build this and what is my legacy going to be? What is this going to look like long term? Man, it's a breath of fresh air and you actually have a true business at this point. You're no longer practicing to be a professional. You've got a sustainable and
That's right.
real business that is hopefully scalable and can be sold at some point in time. But yeah, I would argue too that this is absolutely the most important phase. And we think about this business, and we all got into it because we want to make a good living without a ceiling. We also want flexibility and time. And this is the point in time when I say work on your business instead of in your business, is thinking about what are the important things in my life, like children, marriage, hobbies, things of that nature that you want to allocate other time to. Whereas that first phase, it's it. You're in the zone, and that's really the only thing you have time for.
Yeah, sustainability is absolutely the pinnacle. And again, we just encourage you. If I'll say this: If you don't know where you stand right now with your recurring revenue versus your business and personal budgets, stop the podcast, look at your revenue, and identify your deficit and what needs to be built in order to make that up. Because as Chaz said, number one, just the stress relief of hitting that phase is monumental. And then secondly, in our collective, I'd say over the course certainly of my now 27-year career, people explode once they hit sustainability because it really does, as Chaz said, give you the time to work on your business, not just in your business. And it is maturing. And you've been keeping your commitments to clients for quite a while at this point. And so new business is coming in without you having to pursue it. Instead of having to meet with 10 people to get one new client, people are calling you. You meet with one person and you get one
Right.
new client. It becomes very efficient and people really explode. So again, if you don't know where you are relative to this right now, stop the podcast and look at your revenue, look at your budgets, and see what your deficit is. So, Chaz, anything else on sustainability before we move on to the
That just triggered just a thought, just an application in life and business that I've started practicing years ago, but taking one day a quarter to work on your business, cutting your phone off, cut your email off, build yourself an agenda, get out of your office. Man, it's been a game changer for me over the years to just take one day a quarter to take a step back and really think about your business, where you're going. And this is the point in time when that should begin. And to Jerry's point, if you don't know, your business and personal expenses and what your recurring revenue is, that's one could be one of those days working through that. And what does that look like?
So you start in the business, you learn the academics of this, you develop your communication skills, you delay gratification from transaction-based business into recurring revenue. You look up and you're at sustainability. 100% of your business and personal expenses are covered by recurring revenue now. Your business begins to really take off. And then inevitably, this recurring revenue ongoing relationship model runs you automatically into phase three, which is capacity. So if you think about it, as an advisor, you only have about 400 meetings a year that you can conduct. And so just like you wake up in sustainability and you know that 100% of your expenses are covered by recurring revenue, you also wake up with a certain number of meetings that are already booked for the coming year with reviews with your existing clients. And so in our collective, we've seen it's typically around 150 to 250 client relationships an advisor has when they're approaching or hit capacity. The good news is they're generally in the range of about 750,000 to $1,250,000 of recurring revenue. So there's plenty of revenue there for scaling purposes and adding resources. But you will wake up one day and out of your 400 meetings that you have available for the year, you'll have about 400 pre-booked meetings or meetings that need to be scheduled for reviews and ongoing relationship with clients. Chaz, anything else on capacity?
Yeah, I think by nature, we are greedy.
Mm.
When we get to capacity, it is not second nature for an advisor to begin to think about handing off clients possibly. And that's sort of the next phase that we'll talk about. So you have this growth curve, you're growing, and at some point you hit that capacity when you only have so much time. And usually one of two things happen. You either stop growing and you just maintain, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're content and that's where you want to be, that's okay. I was in that phase for about 7 years of my career, still growing some, but the growth curve definitely leveled out. It began to plateau. Or you continue to grow and you get a bad reputation because you're not fulfilling the expectations that your clients have. And so it's really important to think and work through, am I going to be one of those? Or am I gonna go with the other option, which is to continue to grow more of a business versus just an individual practice? That phase hit me just a few years ago, and man, it's been so cool to see other advisors be brought into the business and also see those relationships transfer to other individuals. But and that's the expansion phase, but my point is just having in the back of your mind, knowing what your capacity is, so your systems Your processes drive what your capacity is. We've got a large range from a capacity standpoint, I think ranging from 100 to 250. It depends on the type of clients that you have. Everybody's different, how, high maintenance the clients that you have are. And so being very aware and cognizant of how many meetings per week can I hold. Zoom's been a game changer on this. I mean, meetings tend to be shorter and quicker, and you have travel time, things of that nature. So capacity, I think, has grown a little bit after COVID and Zoom really becoming more and more relevant for us. Just being aware of what our tendencies are and reflecting, again, taking some time to work on your business is really important, especially once you get to capacity.
Absolutely. So if there's one piece of counsel about capacity, it's to get out ahead of it. So anticipate it. This is again part of the cognition of building a practice and ultimately a company. You don't want to get to the point to where you literally don't have any more time. Every day is covered with reviews and you feel like your calendar is absolutely jam-packed, and then address capacity. You want to get out ahead of it and work toward the inevitable phase 4, which is expansion. Expansion is when that founding advisor brings on a junior advisor, whatever title you want to give to them, but an advisor who has capacity. They bring them in, and over the course of a responsible period of time, probably a year and a half, introduces them to some of the relationships that it makes sense for that second advisor to service in exchange for a share of the revenue. It's important to note here, you need to have an operating agreement. You're not sharing the equity. You're not giving away accounts. You're not losing value of your now company versus your practice. So you have an operating agreement that defines you're exchanging service of client relationships for revenue, but equity resides completely still with the founding advisor. But this is where client segmentation is really important. So it's identifying all of the clients, the revenue associated with those clients, and then thinking with some more quantitative aspects and also qualitatively about those relationships to identify the relationships that the founding advisor needs to retain in service versus those that should be delegated. I want to make very clear here, the best advisors, obviously, they love their clients and there's genuine relationship that occurs over the course of time and mutual trust and admiration, and I'd go as far as to say love for clients. Client segmentation is not an exercise that is cold and calculating and where an advisor looks at everybody like a number and says, "Oh, these people aren't worth my time anymore." It's not that at all. Alternatively, what it is it's looking now at your tenure, your experience, the academic understanding that you have, and combining your intellect and your experience to provide wise counsel. What client situations have the complexity that really need your level of wise counsel versus those client situations that may be less complex and could be serviced by that second advisor. So, Chaz, you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I've got quite a few thoughts. Just to start where you just ended, those are all really valid points. Here's one thing that for me when I was in this phase was finally recognizing, we can easily convince ourselves. Remember, we're talking about being greedy, that a client that you are making a recurring revenue of, let's just pick a number, $1,000 a year, and it takes one 30-minute phone call and a couple service things throughout the year that you can convince yourself that, oh man, it's $1,000 a year. I don't need help with that. And that's the greedy side of things. But here's the reality. What I found is those clients that I brought in, a new partner or associate to service them, they did a better job for those clients than I would have or had been doing by renewing their plans or re-upping the level of service and really taking better care than I was taking care of those C and D clients. If you think about just a standard segmentation, A, B, C, D, and the old 80/20 rule on segmentation that, 20% of your clients make up 80% of your revenue. And then recently I was talking with a group that's sort of helping us think through segmentation, and they did 80/20 squared. So thinking about even doing the 80/20 on that 80/20, man, it's mind-boggling. And here's the other thing. that was very surprising to me, and we have seen this over and over and over as an organization, is when you begin this process of transitioning your lower clients. When I say lower, I mean just that's probably not the right word. The ones that will be better served bringing another advisor in. Let's just say that they grow 30 plus percent in those years in which they are in the process of transitioning. The years that they aren't or weren't, they're only growing around 3%. I mean, think about that difference. It's gigantic and it's
So, Chaz,
counterintuitive.
to be clear, to make sure that this is coming through clearly, you're saying that the founding advisor we have seen grow at about a 30% clip while going through the client delegation process versus those who are not, who are at capacity, are typically growing around 3%.
Exactly. And so in my mind, when I did this, I was going to lose at least 10% of my revenue. I was just willing to go in and take it on the chin, and it's the right thing to do based on where I am. And I grew. It was very surprising and I actually had more fun.
Counterintuitive.
Huh?
It's counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. It's not what you would think would happen. And I would also say it has been a more fun. And the other interesting aspect, and we're talking about the grind of the inception phase, the first phase of your practice, we can help shorten that phase and also increase the success rates of new planners getting into the business. And so it becomes less and less about us and more about building a legacy, helping someone else get in the business, doing a better job of serving our clients. I mean, you go on and on the
And your
different
revenue grows as a byproduct.
and you increase your revenue. And so I found myself with, I think, 30% less clients, and yet my revenue still grew. So I have more time, more revenue, and my clients are better taken care of. I mean, it's a win-win-win situation. But
It's
again,
been
you also have to find the right associate, and there's no such thing as a perfect person. And I would also encourage someone to find someone that's a little different than they are. I think that some partnerships work very well when you've got, different personality sets.
so for the association that Chaz and I are part of and within our collective, now our collective's goal is really has two main objectives. One is to get advisors to that point of sustainability as quickly as possible because it's just this gigantic moment to celebrate. And then second is to facilitate capacity to expansion because what Chaz is saying there, it is fascinating that you can enumerate the number of benefits to other people, to your clients, the industry, and as a byproduct have revenue growth and have data and statistics on that. And yet it is still so unnatural for advisors that have grown a book of business to delegate the service of relationships in exchange for some revenue. And so if we have a second exhortation here, right? The first one was be in a place. You have to have the capital to as quickly as possible not do transaction-based securities business, but make it recurring. The second exhortation is go against your grain and against your natural tendencies to hold things in close, introduce a second advisor, introduce them to the relationships. The trust that the clients have in you is portable. It's transferable to that second advisor. If you trust that advisor, your client will as well. Delegate the service in exchange for some revenue and watch all of these benefits unfold. But it is a step of faith. And our second exhortation in this podcast is take that step of faith, move
Absolutely.
into expansion.
100%. Couple of cautions is we're moving from expansion to owner, not operator, the fifth one. Pay these associates fairly. And I'm telling you, we have had a lot, and if you're out there and aren't being paid fairly, then that's typically what happens because again, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but we can be greedy by nature, and so we need to pay them fairly to be able to retain them. And down the road, my second caution is opportunities for ownership by those associate advisors is really important. We've had a lot of people that have come to us and join our organization, for example, because they were stuck. They weren't being paid fairly and they weren't given opportunities for further growth, whether that's ownership or getting referrals within the organization, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. It's really more an ideal than a practice, although it could absolutely be practiced. But it is the idea of owner, non operator. So, what human beings with assigned roles that have assigned responsibilities that follow systems and processes for execution would have to be in place so that the founding advisor could be gone. And even in their absence, not only would the company continue to keep its commitments to clients, but even grow in their absence. And the point of phase 5, owner non-operator, is not lethargy, laziness, so we can just have as much free time as possible. It's really, if you begin to think in this way, what would it take in order to get to this place? You will build a better company. You will optimize the client experience. You will really serve the community. And as a byproduct, you will again continue to grow. So, Chaz, any comments on
I would
phase
just say this is just being a good business owner
That's
and
right.
thinking through succession planning. If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, what would happen? What does that look like? And really building a true company versus everything being advisor centric. And so, you're going from expansion to owner, a non-operator. Your language changes from me to we as a company, things of that nature. Like it's a completely different mindset. But I think bottom line, it's just being a good business owner.
That's right. That's right. Now, it's things like functional things like, do you have an entity as opposed to, are you a sole proprietorship? Is your CRM cleaned up? Do you have workflows built into your CRM? Do you have buttoned up financial statements? All of those types of functional matters are incumbent in owner non operator. And then also really being intentional about the team that you have built at this point in order to be able to service that level of business. Do the team members have clearly defined roles that have clearly defined responsibilities? There's an old theorem that says, I can't quote the name of it, but that tasks expand to fill the time allotted, right? So if you have an hour to get something done, it generally takes an hour. If you have 2 hours, it generally takes 2 hours. And I can't tell you in my personal career how many times I've seen an advisor group say, we're just so covered up with work. We don't know what to do. We need to hire another person. They hire another person. And then without having defined responsibilities and systems and processes for execution of the same, they completely absorb another person, are paying another salary. And a few months later, they're telling you the exact same thing. They have absolutely more work to do than they can get done. And so it's really important to define roles, responsibilities, systems, processes. Chaz Emerson is probably among the top I've ever seen in doing that. So you're a great one to speak on that, Chaz.
Well, it's there's a lot of work that goes into the to being the owner, and you spend a good bit more time on the administrative side versus the actual practicing as a planner. And so that's not always fun, but it can be challenging and it's the next level. And I've really enjoyed the phase of kind of working through 4 to 5 and what that looks like and working on the business. It's been a lot of fun.
Final exhortation to our loyal listener base for this podcast. Our third exhortation here is evaluate yourself. It's a great time for self examination. What phase am I in? And then take some time for strategy and have conversations with other people about what it's going to take to get to the next phase. So, Chaz, anything to add before we close out?
That's it. Thanks for listening. Sorry we went a little overtime.
Thanks, everybody.